welcome back. For those who are joining for the first time, I am Dr. Samaria M. Colbert. I am the CEO and founder of a mental health clinic located downtown Greensboro called Kingdom Creative Counseling. I'm a licensed therapist with 16 plus years of experience, a published author of close to 60 books, and I am an entrepreneur. I'm a little bit different from your average therapist, and that is that I give you faith-based principles to bring about lasting change. Are y'all ready? So today we're going to talk about an interesting topic. It is called trusting God when you don't know what he is doing. Oh, this is needed. This is easier said than done. What do you do, my brothers, my sisters? Well, you got to trust God when, what are you up to? I reminded, so the subtitle was when you ask God, why am I going through this? Who are you going to send with me? And his only response is, just trust me. Talk about something. I said in one of my previous teachings how sometimes we don't always agree with God or his methods, but if we love God, we have to submit, or we should agree, we should just submit to his authority, even when we don't understand what he is doing. I wrote a book so many years ago. I'm going to post the link below. And that book is called Trusting God Isn't Easy, but it is worth it. And so when you make the decision to trust God, it's easier said than done. It's easier to trust God when things are going your way. It's hard when you don't see a way out. And so what you will do is once you begin to trust God and you wait on him and you wait on his instructions, even through tremendous obstacles, you'll be grateful that you waited. You'll be grateful that you decided to trust God. Trusting God pays off. So I'm going to real brief today. We're talking about 10 principles concerning how do you trust God. You want to take a look at Mark chapter 4, the verse 35 through 40. I'm not going to read it for the sake of time, but I want to kind of illustrate how even the disciples who were right next to Jesus had some struggles with trusting God. And so the scripture goes like this. Jesus says, hey, let's go to the other side. Come on, let's get on this boat. We're going to go to the other side. He is declaring that they are going to go to the other side. Y'all say, all right, well, Samaria, go with me here. It's going to make sense. I'm going to make my case plain. As I like to say, he says, let's go to the other side. So they get on the boat. Jesus goes down to the bottom below. He goes to sleep. But remember, he did say they were going to the other side. They experienced a storm, and it was a great storm. And the disciples got scared. And they started to question where they were going, or even if they would make it to the other side. But Jesus is in the boat asleep. Have you ever felt like that? You're in the middle of a situation, you're in the middle of a storm, you're going through some things, and it seems like Jesus is MIA. He seems like he is asleep. So they go to awaken Jesus, and they said to him, don't you care that we are perishing? We are dying. He says, oh, ye of little faith. So it teaches us that even the people who have walked with Jesus, who have great, seen his signs and miracles, can feel like God is asleep in their situation. You're in a situation, you don't know how you're going to get your way out. It's a storm coming. Storms could come anytime, financial, economics, pains, proclivities, things that you never thought you'd go through. And we just want Jesus to or God to wake up. Don't you see that I'm in pain? And it feels like he's somewhere asleep. I'm going to tell you something, regardless of how you feel, regardless of what it looks like, just trust God. I talked about in one of my previous teachings how oftentimes people step outside the will of God. And they clearly know that they're stepping out of the will of God. They're not spiritual blind. They know what the word says concerning a matter. They know to seek God in all his ways. And they don't trust God in the area or God. So their hearts are hardened so much in a particular area. They don't trust God to answer, or that he is concerned about this area of their lives. So they step out. You end up getting burnt real bad when that happens, when God's hand is really on your life. So I'm just going to encourage you to, again, regardless of what it looks like. I know it's hard. I know it hurts. And sometimes if you like me, you look around and you see these people and they call themselves prophet this and prophet that, and they just seem like, they just always prophesying and candy coated messages and all these wonderful things. But When you are maturing in God, when God has greatness on the inside, He has to take you through what I call a perfecting process. And it doesn't happen. God is not your personal Santa Claus, but He is your Father. And being a father, He has to take you through certain things, allow you to experience certain things. And the only thing you can do is trust Him. All right. So trusting God is not for the immature. It's for those who said, Lord, I don't know what you're doing. I don't know how you're going to do it. I don't know how you're going to get me out of this one. But I determined in my heart, I am going to trust you. Are y'all ready for this? All right. Principles concerning trust. 1, trust and faith must go together, right? So you don't put faith in what you don't trust, and you don't trust without faith. Okay? So let me say it again. You won't put faith in what you don't trust, but you don't trust without faith. Trust is assurance. It is character. It means that I understand and I know that you are not going to mislead me or lie to me, that you're going to do what you said. You ever meet people who have a consistent pattern of being inconsistent? You know, based upon that behavior, they cannot be trusted, but God can be trusted. So faith is that confidence or that trust that you are going to see results, even though I don't see them right now. So my trust and my faith, even though they're not quite the same, they must go together. If you don't have faith in God, you don't trust Him. And if you don't trust God, you don't have faith. All right, point number 2, trust is confidence. It is the firm belief in the reliability, the truth, the ability, or the strength. This is why God says, I can do all things. We can say, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I can do all things through Christ. There is nothing that's impossible with God. And so I trust, if I trust you, I have confidence in you. Point number 3, we're going to get this real quick. Trust. Without trust, fear and anxiety is present. Without trust, fear and anxiety. So you cannot have fear and trust at the same time. I remember some years ago, I was going through certain things, and story of my life, God be put me through a process. He's preparing me for some things, and He has to mature me. So I tell you about my little business, okay? Without telling you my business. I'm your business. So I was going through some things. I had find myself in another situation that I did not anticipate. And God had put me in this situation. So God will put you in some situations that He allows situations. And I said, God, why am I here? You know, I'm thinking, you know, my little righteousness is wonderful. You know, I've made the right choices, you know, oh my God. And I still find myself in a situation. I said, God, why am I here? I don't understand. And He said, Samaria, just trust me. Just trust me. And that's how I ended up writing that book. Trusting God is not easy, but it is. It's a really good book, y'all. I encourage you to go pick it up. I think it's like $14.99, maybe less than that, but it's $14.99. You know what I'm saying? Go ahead and pick up the book. The link is going to be low. But He says, Mary, just trust me. Just trust me. And He got me out of that situation when I learned what I was supposed to learn. Just trust me, Mary. All right. So point out, no one can force you to trust. It is a decision. No one can force you to trust. It must be your what? Decision. You have to decide to trust. Point number 5, oftentimes the reason why we don't trust is because of disappointments in the past. You've had people who've broken our trust. We have people who betrayed us. We've had people who have done us real dirty, who said, you can trust me. I'm your A1 from day one. I'm your ride or die. And they betrayed your trust like it was nothing. They broke your heart and ran over with a big old truck like it was nothing. And you had to pick up the pieces of your broken spirit. Sorry. It's Friday, and I'm having good, I'm still be working, but you know what I'm saying? I just be, you know, having a good time. Okay. But they disappointed you. Disappointed is the me. You ever have someone that they betrayed you so bad? I don't care if you ever, never, ever, I will never in life ever trust you ever again. And so what happens is sometimes we've been betrayed by people that are closest to us, our family, our friends, significant others. You've been betrayed. And so these are the people that we can see. And so oftentimes the mind associates, well, how can I trust a God that I cannot see when the people that I can see are betraying my trust? But I will tell you something, God can be trusted. You don't have to put necessarily all the trust in man, but God can be trusted. So oftentimes we don't trust because of disappointments in our past that lead us to have some difficulties trusting. Okay. So, but watch this, y'all. Point number 6, when trust was present, so is peace, so is joy, so is a rest. You know, a lot of times people say, I can't sleep at night because your mind is trying to figure it out over and over again. And so you're so busy trying to figure it out, you don't rest. You know, your mind doesn't stop, you know, and so you keep going and going and going. But when trust is, when you say, God, I trust you. God, I trust you. God, I trust you. I don't know how this situation is going to get out. I'm going to get out of this situation. I don't know what's going to happen, but God, I trust you. Then the peace comes. Now, peace does not come as a result of getting what you want all the time. Peace comes oftentimes knowing it is the assurance that God has my back. He's not going to lie to me. So when trust is there, when you truly trust God from the inward parts of your being, when you truly trust him, you obey him. When you truly trust him, you'll follow his ways. When you truly trust him, you'll obey his voice. You cannot tell me that you truly trust God when you're stepping out of his will. Remember I said in one of the teachings earlier, I said, my sheep, the Bible says, my sheep know my voice and no other voice will they follow. And so when you're following an alternative voice that is not of God, it simply means that you don't trust God. Now I know that's hard to accept, but that we all have had areas in our life that we simply do not trust God, and God has to develop us. God is not offended by any of that. He has to develop us into that place. But remember, I gotta say this again, when trust is there, my peace is present. When trust is there, my joy is present. When trust is there, I know that I have done all that I know to do. I've been obedient, and I know God is going to get the final say. He just did not tell me. God did not tell you everything he's going to do, how he's going to do it, how he's going to make a way. You got to know that according to his word here, he said it, he's not going to lie, and he's going to do it. Okay? So trust means our sole dependency is on God and not of man. Psalms 146 says, put no trust in powerful people, for there is no help for you there. So you don't have necessarily, so a lot of times we think we just know someone, we can get this connection, or we get this person who has a connection, and then they sometimes they are human beings. Well, most of the time, all the time, they are human beings just like us. So you don't idolize, you can respect someone and their authority in their position, but you do not put all of your trust in them, because they'll disappoint you. They will, even unintentionally. Sometimes they'll disappoint you with their own choices. How are you so spiritually inept and you go in that direction? But the Bible has put no trust in powerful, Psalm 146:3, put no trust in powerful people. You know, you can respect someone and say, hey, but at the end of the day, I got to hear from God concerning that. All right. So trust is not circumstantial. So like I said, it is easy. It is easier. And I use that word respectfully, to trust when things are going your way. You can trust, you know, if you got millions of dollars in the bank, you can pretty much trust your ability to pay your bills and your car payment if you even have one. Why? Because you can clearly see money in the bank. You can clearly see this thing. But what happens when you're in a situation where you don't know? Where you don't see a way. So trust is not it's not based upon having things your way and doing things the way in which you want them to do. Or if you get a promise from God, and you know every step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and you know every step from A to Z, is that really God? God will always put you in a situation, a circumstance where the only thing you can do is to trust him. Okay? Trust is a test that God allows in our development process. Oh Lord. I'm serious though. If you were being processed, I've done a lot of study on development, like leadership development, being developed into your purpose, your promise, and the thing that God has for you. And I always talk about, and I've studied this, how God takes us through painful processes. And we're not always in a state of pain. We're not always in a state of like a trouble, a turmoil. That's not God either. But when God is developing us, or when God is getting ready to take us to the next level, there's a series of tests that he has to take us through. And that is not necessarily because he wants to question our loyalty. It means because he wants to develop us in an area. He has to grow our strength muscle. Okay. So we can handle the weight of that assignment. And so one of the areas, tests that you will have to endure was the trust test. That means when you trust God, folks, you said when you got to trust God when you can't trace him, when you don't know how he's going to come through. When you sat in the church and they told you by Thursday it's going to turn around, by Thursday and it came and going and they turned around. They prophesying 6 months you can get over it, and it's going to be all over. And then 6 months comes and go. And so you have to learn that God is developing you. And sometimes that prophetic word may be for someone else, but it's not for you. But you still have to trust God anyway. So remember, trust is just a test. It is a test that God allows us to go through in our development process. And remember, everything God has for you, it is for you. And man can take you away from that thing, but God has to prepare you for the position that he has called you to. All right. I thought that was real good. Go. That's good. All right. Point number 10, our trust must be put on trial. Our trust must be put on trial. There's sometimes God has to teach us how to trust. If you have never been in a place of uncertainty, you don't know how to trust. If everything you ever wanted, you got just like that, you don't know how to trust. You more than likely have a sense of entitlement. If everything is handed to you on a silver platter, here you go, baby. There it is. You don't appreciate it. So remember, our trust must be put on trial. It must be put on trial because it matures us. As a mature Christian that learns to trust God and not have temper tantrums and falling out and carrying on just because we didn't get our way. We have to learn how to trust God. So therefore our trust must be put on trial. And oftentimes God has to take us through some painful processes so we know who not to trust. God has to develop our what we call discernment. Okay. Discernment is not the same as pessimism. It's not the same as being overly critical, but sometimes we have put trust in wrong people who have no capacity. And God has to develop you so you have some discernment. And so you learn who to trust and who not to trust. Because everybody in your face talking good, and I know people right now. Listen, the stuff that they said, and I initially trusted them because they seemed to have their character and themselves together. And life taught me that you can never, ever. And I'm not talking about everybody, but certain people, certain proclivities and certain characteristics, their integrity, their lack of it. Anything they say come out their mouth, you can just about guarantee it's a lie. You have a consistent pattern of being inconsistent and lying. You know what I'm saying? And so God has to develop us, and not necessarily so we have this kind of ulterior, like I can't trust it. No, so you don't necessarily take people at face value, and you learn to develop discernment. Okay. Remember, I said everyone that's talking good to you is not necessarily for you. Sometimes they're your frenemies in disguise as your enemies. Your enemies in disguise is your friends. Just because someone is good to you does not mean they're good for you. Just because someone is flattering you does not necessarily mean they're the person for you. There could be a demonic agenda behind that. They could be operating under a demonic spirit. And so God has to teach us not only how to trust him, but he has to teach us how to discern who we can trust and who we can bring into our inner spaces or not. Everyone does not have capacity, but everybody talking good. Remember that. All right. So when people don't want God, so listen to this, because people have created this old theology around, you're not supposed to trust God, or you're overly spiritual, your religious spirit, because you waiting on God, and God ain't gonna do this, and God ain't gonna do that. Even the Bible clearly says to acknowledge God in all your ways, and he should direct our path. It clearly tells us not to put our trust in ourselves, but to trust God. It clearly says his ways, not our ways. I mean, there's clear scripture. So, but they try to justify. Remember, people will always justify their opinions based upon what their biases is and how their hearts are hardened in a certain area. So when people don't wait on God, remember that there's an area in their life that they simply don't trust. And you can have areas in your life that you're very highly spiritually aware and you trust God. I trust God. You can say, I trust God for my provision because I've seen him do it before. I trust God for my help because I've done the work and God is opened up the door. I trust. So you can trust God in one area, but I trust God. I trust God with my career and my ability to be successful in my career, but I don't trust God in my personal life. So I do whatever I want in my personal life, but I trust God and pray to him for a promotion on my job. You see what I'm saying? So when people have areas in their life where they don't wait on God, where they don't seek his face, where they don't acknowledge his ways, we're not saying, God, what is your will concerning? That is an area that they don't trust him. And again, we all have had those areas, but life and a little bit of pain, lots of pain and maturity and really spending time in with the Lord and knowing him, it teaches you, one, that God can be trusted, even if I can't trace him. Even if he doesn't tell me every single thing I'm supposed to, I can still trust him. I can still trust him. But when we don't wait on God in a certain area, those are areas in our lives that we simply do not trust. Right? So, last few things. I told you I'll be quick today. According to Numbers 3, facts about God. Number one, this is really important. According to Numbers 23:19, if there's something that God cannot do, there is something that God cannot do. It says he cannot lie. He cannot lie. If God told you this is yours, it's yours. If God told you he is going to give you desires of your heart, he's going to give it to you. Oftentimes we have manipulated our own minds to think God said such and such. God said, that's your husband. God said, that's your wife. God said, you're supposed to go here. We have manipulated because God had never really said that. So we have to learn how to hear the voice of God correctly in our own agendas. Okay. But God cannot lie. If God says a thing, it's going to happen. It's not going to happen the way how we want it to happen, but it's going to happen. We must trust, but God is not going to force us to trust him. Remember, God's not going to force him to. It's a decision that you have to make. God, so let's read. This is one of my favorite scriptures. I got a lot of favorite scriptures because I like to read about. But anyway, it says Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5, and it reads, trust in the Lord with all thine heart. Emphasis on the word all. That means with everything you have, everything that's in you, everything. Remember, where your heart is, there your treasure will be. With everything, with my career, with my relationships, with my job, with my money, with my health, I got to trust God with all thine heart. And then watch this. It says, and lean not to thy own understanding. That's to correct the people who say, well, just do what God, just do whatever. And wait God to know. It says, and lean not to thine own understanding. Ain't that the word? Now you look that up on your own time, because some of these things y'all be hearing, what in the world? What Bible you reading? It clearly says I have to trust in the Lord with all thine heart and lean not to thine own understanding. Come on, saints. Ain't that the word? Verse 6, and it says, in all thy ways, look at that word again, all means in everything, in all that I do, all. When it says all, my good people, it's an all, and that's not a law, that's a principle. But some things you could avoid if you just, some pain places you can avoid if you just acknowledge God in all thy ways. Acknowledge him. And acknowledge does not happen after the fact. Acknowledge does not happen when your heart is involved. Acknowledge does not happen when you've already moved halfway across the country. I'm just going to trust God. Acknowledge happens before the hand, so you know that you're on the right path. And he shall direct thy paths. Now I know you with the mic you may pick up, but it says PATHS. Which is not path, not single, not a single path, but paths with the S on it. And that means in all, and you have difficult, like, okay, God, what path should I take concerning my career? What path should I take concerning my ministry? What path should I take concerning my personal life and who I should marry? What path should I take concerning my health? And what's the best area? What can I do? My paths. Now let's keep going on here because I'm picking up on something. It says in verse 7, I was only going to read 5, so let's go 7. It says, be not wise in thine own eyes, fear the Lord and depart from evil. So don't believe your own press. That's number 1. Fear means to reverence God and to depart from evil. Don't be just in there doing evil things, wicked things, sinful things intentionally. Hang around evil people. Depart from evil. Watch this. It shall be health. Verse 8, it shall be health to thy navel and marrow to their bones. When you trust God, it's going to give you strength from your inward parts. It's going to be your health and your strength and your marrow and your bones. Trusting God pays off. Verse number 9, it says, honor the Lord with thy substance. Honor God with thy substance, everything that's in you. With the first fruits of all thine increase. Everything you do, put God first in it. That's how you know you trust God. Verse 10, so shall thy barns be filled with plenty, and thy presses shall burst out with new wine. What does that mean? It means your prosperity, even your money, even every area of your health is going to come as a result of trusting God. Ain't that good? Watch this. My son, verse 11, despise not the chastening, despise. Okay, remember it again, y'all. I'm getting ahead of myself. My son, despise not the chastening of the Lord, nor be weary at his correction, because we all have had time when we got outside of ourselves. But God is saying, listen, don't despise that. Chastening means to discipline, but also discipline, remember, means to develop. So God's developing us into who he calls. And a part of our developing process is someone say, hey, you're doing the wrong thing. Up though, you went the wrong direction. It's also developing us. And don't be weary. Don't be discouraged when God corrects you. God should be able to correct you. Okay. Okay. This is good to me. Okay. Whew, that's good to me. Verse 13, this last one, but you can read the whole thing. Happy is the man that findeth wisdom, and the man that getteth understanding. When you trust God, God releases to you joy, peace, understanding. He releases to you prosperity, but he releases to you wisdom. You find wisdom. You find wisdom when you trust God. Because you're acknowledging him in everything. When someone's in front of you, you're acknowledging God. You find wisdom and you get understanding. That's good to me. So trusting God is not easy, but it is going to pay off. And all the time, we're dealing with a society in the world that does not trust God. So they're going to look at you strange. What you mean you trusted God in that area? What you mean doing it? What you mean? That don't even make sense because it's not to their own understanding. They didn't follow their own way and got their own results. But when you trust God, I promise you your results are never going to be the same. Now, let me just minister this to you. Isaiah 55 and 11. Let's see. Let's read this. Let's read this all the time. Give me 1 minute here. I wasn't going to just tell you to read it, but I just got to read it myself. I want you to understand something. Every place that God sends you, you will succeed when you trust him. Listen to me. Every place that God sends you, you will succeed. Every person that God sends. Now you send, like I said, I tell my last one, if you to put someone in a position and you to send yourself somewhere, you're not guaranteed success. You're just not. But when God has planted you in a place and God sends you somewhere, or he sends you to a person or a promise or vice versa, they are sent to you. You are going to succeed. Watch this. And the word of the Lord says this. Isaiah 55:11, King James Version. So shall my word go forth that cometh out of my mouth. It shall not return to me void, but it shall accomplish that which I plead, and it shall prosper in the thing whereto I sent it. The New Living Translation, it's going to prosper everywhere I sent it. So when you have your heart in the will of God, regardless of what it looks like, it says it's going to prosper. You're going to be successful because you are following the leading of God. You cannot trust God and disobey. You cannot trust God in dishonor. You cannot trust God in disrespect. You cannot trust God, and you are easy to follow false doctrine. Easy. So let me read that from the New Living Translation, and it reads, and the same with my word. I send it out, and it will produce fruit. It will accomplish all I want to, and it shall prosper everywhere I send it. There are so many benefits. Just trust God, regardless of what it looks like. You will have times where your trust is tried. You have time where you're like, God, I don't understand this one. And if you know you're really hearing from God when he don't sit there and tell you everything Gary do. He doesn't. It's kind of like, if you ever ride in the car with the kids, it's a long drive, and they keep saying, when are we going to get there? When are we going to get there? When are we going to get there? Come on, we're going to get there. Are we there yet? Are we there yet? I got to use the bathroom. I got to do here. When are we going to get there? Are you saying are we still going in the right direction? What direction we're going? You know what I'm saying? You ever get that kind of gets annoying after a while. Well, here's the thing. God, we are in the passenger seat. God is driving. We say we trust God. And he's not going to sit there and tell us every step of the way. This is where we're going here. We're going here. We're going. Okay, we got 1 more hour drive. Then we got 30 minutes. He's not going to tell you everything, because that's not trusting. If God has to tell you every little thing he's doing, how he's doing it, when he's doing it, how he's doing it, you don't trust him. If you're in a relationship with someone, you got to call it 501 and 502 and 503. Where you going? How you doing? Where you going? Where you going? Where you going? Where you going? Why didn't you call me? You don't trust that person. So you know how annoying that will be. That's why I don't deal with people like that. Well, imagine God. So God has more patience than us. But let me just tell you, just trust God. I know what it looks like. I know it's hard. It's easier said than done. We can get a little t-shirt that says trust God. This my little t-shirt, you can't read it. It says trust God for everything. We can't read it. It's my little t-shirt. My teaching today. It says trust God with everything. I know you can't see it. But when you really do, you're unstoppable. And you have more peace and joy and the anointing. All right, God bless you. I'm Dr. Samaria M. Cole. We're going to talk a little bit more another day, another time on the banger. Okay. You can go to my website at www.drsamariaculver.com. You can also go to my training website. I do have a number of training courses for training clinicians or professionals. And it's called www.trainingchristianleaders.com. And if you want to know a little more about my counseling practice, like I said, we are located downtown Greensboro. I do incorporate faith-based practices into my sessions. Just go there. Just check me out, www.kingdomcreativecounseling.com. We'll be back another day, another time, another banger. Bye.